Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Zzzax of Live podcast, a Marvel podcast from Laughing Place. This is episode number 73. We're going to be breaking down the third episode of Secret Invasion on Disney Plus. We're going to have some fun games. We're going to get into some Marvel news. Before we do all that, though, I do want to preface this episode real quick and just say today is, as of this, if you're watching live, you understand that it is currently July 6th. Whenever you're listening to the recording, who knows? But it's July 6th, and somebody in my neighborhood decided today would be a good time to shoot off all of their 4th of July fireworks. So you might hear some background noise, including some dogs barking in response to said fireworks. That being said, Kyle, how was your holiday weekend?
Well, it wasn't more than a weekend. It was like a random Tuesday off that just kind of messed up my whole schedule. It messed up our schedule here a little bit too. So that's why we're on a Thursday. We will be back to Wednesday next week.
Yeah,
it was pretty good. How about you?
It was good. I'm with you. I totally threw off my entire schedule. I had to rush out to bring my recycling out today as the truck was pulling up. It was not prepared for that. I was thinking it's like Tuesday right now, but yeah, so everything's thrown off. But it was good. I ate too many hot dogs and desserts, and yeah.
Okay, Joey.
But yeah, like I said, we're going to talk about Secret Invasion, but let's start off with some Marvel news. Again, back to the weekly episodes here. Not a ton of news to talk about. Let's start off, though, with something neither one of us have seen yet, unless you've watched our video on the Laughing Place YouTube channel.
I did. Well, I had to man the live stream.
Okay.
So I've seen, for all intents and purposes, Rogers the Musical.
Yeah, we are talking about Rogers the Musical, which debuted last week in Disney California Adventure, just outside of Avengers Campus. I wonder if now it's like technically part of Avengers Campus, talking about the Hyperion Theater. But yeah, I haven't watched it yet, just for the slight chance that I do get to see it in person. I don't think that's going to happen, in which case I will watch the video eventually. But if you aren't going to see it in person, or even if you have seen it and you want to watch it again, you can check that out on the Laughing Place YouTube channel. What did you think of it, Kyle?
I thought it was interesting. I mean, speaking of it being an Avengers Campus or adjacent to it, obviously in the Hawkeye show, the show is in the universe where these aren't just superheroes, not movies, but they're real people, real superheroes. And so I was wondering how they'd kind of do that. And I think for the most part, it does kind of stay in a world. Like there's parts that you'll recognize from the movies, but it's also, they change some things. So it's not the exact same thing that you're like, oh yeah, that's not how it happened. It's like, well, yeah, they don't know exactly how it happened either. But yeah, nothing jumped out. I mean, obviously I'm watching on a live stream and it's kind of all over and it's not the best sound or whatever. So I don't know if I missed some things that would kind of hint more at it being like in world. But I thought it was interesting. Kind of, it did a good job of mixing kind of like the comical, like B movie crappy on purpose kind of aesthetic of Save the City. With actually telling a story that's, doesn't make you feel like a waste of time. Like it has some heart to it. And I thought that they did a decent job at even Save the City. Like, where does that fit into the story? And I thought they did a really clever job of continuing that for a couple of beats to a point that made sense. Hopefully that doesn't give too much away, but I thought they did a good job with that, incorporating that one old song and Star Spangled Man with a Plan, with new songs and a whole story.
Yeah, and I mean, you're kind of echoing everything I've heard. I've heard nothing but positive things about the show. Everybody seems to love it. Let's hope that little rumor out there that this is sort of a first step for this musical and that it'll branch out into bigger things in the future. That would be really awesome. And I want to mention too, just to clarify, you talked about watching the live stream on our YouTube channel. There is an actual video there as well. That'll be better quality than a live stream, obviously. So you can check that out on the Laughing Place YouTube channel.
Which we can ask our guest about that later. He shot that one. Yeah. I watched the one that our CEO shot.
Yes. Yeah. So
that he didn't decide to do until like 5 minutes before it happened. So Mike Celestino is a little bit more prepared and has a gimbal and things like that. Very helpful.
Kyle said it, not me. If you're listening to this, Ben, it was not me that said it. More Avengers Campus news. Again, that was Avengers Campus adjacent, but Avengers Campus news across the pond. We've got Mantis coming to Avengers Campus at Disneyland Paris. Well, Walt Disney Studios Park at Disneyland Paris.
Good nomenclature.
which is cool. I like to see. We saw Mantis pop up obviously during Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 over in California. And I like to see that the characters make their way around. Like it's not limited to just one. Obviously that has been the case with some characters in the past, but I'd like to see it become more common to see them pop up everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, Paris has been interesting because they didn't have that aspect of something new all the time. And that's a really good version of Avengers Campus. I actually went to that one first before I came to the California one. And I was like, okay, I can see how some parts are better. Some parts maybe aren't as much. But yeah, so that's one thing that they could step up. And it feels like they are, even if it is a bit delayed, because they had the Hulk test went there, right. And now Mantis. And they've done a couple other things. But yeah, I hope that they start getting, I don't know why they can't make more than one of these costumes. Maybe just do both at the same time.
Yeah. Have you been to California's yet?
I have briefly, but it was only during a Halloween party. So it wasn't the same. Right. So they had like the Doctor Strange area was kind of partially closed off, but they had Agatha in that area.
Yeah, that's really cool. I want to, we can get into a whole different discussion about Oogie Boogie, but that'll take a little bit too much of our time. So, but yeah, I would love to see Avengers Campus during Halloween. All right, changing gears a little bit. Kyle, how excited were you for Marvel World of Heroes?
I forgot entirely about it, but then when I went to go look it up, I'm like, oh, that actually kind of seems like it could have been fun.
Yeah, that was kind of my sentiment as well. I remember writing about it when it was first announced and thinking so. Marvel World of Heroes was set to be a mobile game created by Niantic, which is the company that created Pokemon Go, as well as a few other games as well.
Most famous for Pokemon Go to the polls. I can't hear Pokemon Go without thinking of that.
I don't know if that's what they're most famous for, but so it was kind of that same concept as Pokemon Go. It was going to be an open world. You get out there and you're playing in this Marvel world, type of game like that. Well, it's been canceled. So you don't have to really even think about it anymore because this game will not be happening. Unfortunately, Niantic will be laying off a bunch of employees. And so they've cut back on some of their projects. And, it's a whole big thing there. But as far as, what pertains to us, Marvel World of Heroes will not be happening, at least not anytime soon. Maybe they come back to that in the future.
I really wanted to shoot concussive pulses from my eyes or whatever those things are called.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you could word that.
Not lasers.
Not lasers, right. The company did say that they are keeping up Pokemon Go. So, I would think that the door is open for them to possibly revisit this in the future, but we'll have to wait and see. Final little bit of news here. So San Diego Comic-Con this year is going to be a little bit different than what we've been used to in the past. It's not going to be quite as busy, I guess. It looks like Marvel has announced their schedule, and it's not. We're not going to have Marvel Studios in Hall H. We talked about that before, and their schedule is just kind of not as busy as it used to be. So, real quick, I'll run through the names of the panel. So on Thursday, July 20th, we've got Designing the X-Men, a This Week in Marvel special event. We also have Marvel and Proco Teach the Art of Storytelling. And then on Friday, July 21st, we got Marvel Heroes, Hulks, and Super Soldiers. That's with C.B. Cebulski, the editor-in-chief at Marvel, so that should be pretty interesting. And then there's also Marvel Fanfare with C.B. Cebulski. Marvel Multiverse role-playing game live. I'm interested in seeing that, actually. I still want to have a Laughing Place live playing of that game when it is fully released. So we'll have to see how that goes. Saturday, July 22nd, Marvel, The Next Big Thing. That's their go-to comics panel that you've covered at C2E2, and that we've seen it every convention in the past, I don't know how many years. And then finally, Sunday, July 23rd, Women of Marvel, another one that is a staple at all of their conventions. And then just today, we got some more news, another Marvel panel coming to Hall H. So Marvel will be in Hall H, just not Marvel Studios. It is for Marvel's Spider-Man 2, the PlayStation game coming in October, with a focus on symbiotes, which I thought was really interesting because Venom is going to have a big role to play in that game. I'm excited about this. I'm looking forward to spending way too much money on buying this game and a PlayStation 5 that I do not yet have. So looking forward to that. I just finished Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, the sort of spin-off game. They're so good. These games are just absolutely incredible. Can't recommend them enough. Again,
so wait, is that on the PS4 then?
Those are both, yeah, the first one and the spin-off game were both available for PlayStation 4. This one, Marvel Spider-Man 2, will not be. It is exclusive to PlayStation 5. Although the other, they've also been released on PC. I would assume it'll come to PC eventually too, but that's...
I'm sure you have an amazing PC that would be able to run that game flawlessly.
Oh, of course, yes, as I look into my MacBook Air right now, yes. No, yeah, so I will probably be buying that game, or buying a PlayStation 5 specifically for that game, because that's how good those are. So kudos to Insomniac Games.
What you're saying is you're going to be heading to GameStop on Black Friday.
That's not something I ever want to do, but
that's how we bought our Switch, and it wasn't that bad.
Okay, all right. Well, we're more of Cyber Monday people. We'll say that. All right. I think that's it for the news. Like I said, not a whole lot to catch up on. Are you ready to get into our discussion about Secret Invasion?
Yes, banner's going up. So as long as you see the banner up, we will be discussing spoilers for episode 3 and the other 2 episodes of Secret Invasion. Once the banner goes down, we'll be having our fun and games, and you can tune back in if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, so there it is. The banner is up if you are watching live. If you are listening to the podcast, you are just confused about everything we just said. But, hopefully you have watched the episode by now anyway. So, Secret Invasion episode 3. I wanted to, before we get into this episode, I caught something else that I didn't mention last week from episode 2. So I wanted to go back really quick. And this actually came into play in episode 3 as well. And it's sort of a callback to Captain Marvel. The conversation. So we talked last week about, well, hang on. I gotta do this the right way. We talked last week about
this week's scroll.
Our pick for this week's scroll. Well, your pick at least was Rhodey, which I think is right. And I agreed at the time. I still thought that was the case. I got further confirmation just from revisiting that episode, because after Rhodey fires Fury, he says to him, "That's what this is all about, Nick." Nobody calls him Nick. It's Fury. So once anybody calls him Nick, that's a scroll. That happens in this week's episode with Bob.
You should stop correcting people in that case.
Right? Yeah, he's giving it away. Well, and he doesn't say it to Rhodey, so it didn't give it away in the moment. But like I mentioned last week, he does immediately after that say, "Did you think I was just going to relinquish my DNA?" As if he, expected them or believed them to be Skrulls in that moment. So I just wanted to revisit that, because I'm 99% sure at this point that Rhodey is in fact a Skrull, and we'll talk a little bit more about him later on, because I want to get your thoughts on the end of this episode, because I thought it was a really interesting way that they handled that. But starting at the beginning here, another thing we talked about last week was that I figured they were using the machine that we talked about to give them these additional powers, creating the MCU's version of Super Skrulls, and they waited not at all to tell us that is exactly what they are doing. Gravik actually said Super Skrulls. So that was pretty cool. This episode really took all the questions that we had and we're just like, here's your answer, here's your answer, here's your answer. Now here's a bunch of new questions. That's just what this episode was.
Yeah, I read that in your recap, and I completely agree. To the point where I was like, okay, well, is that really answering my question or just correcting something that I was stupid about? But we'll get there later.
Okay, all right. Well, like I said, they gave us an answer about the Super Skrulls, then immediately gave us a new question, because the whole premise of this episode is Gravik trying to launch an attack or at least what we think his plan is to launch an attack on the UN. But he specifically says that there's a UN target aboard this plane that once they hit this target, the heroes of Earth will respond. I'm very curious to know who this target is and why.
Reed Richards. Always our answer.
Right, exactly. No, I'm just really curious about who could possibly be working with the UN at this point. And, I mean, is Sam Wilson on that plane? Like, I have no idea. It could be anybody. So I thought that was a really interesting little tease there about, because this show is going to continue to not be about the Avengers, but it's going to threaten the possibility of the Avengers. So I liked the way that they did that.
I was like, you better not. You better not.
So I mean, I guess I got to put you on the spot then. What? Give me a name. Who is it? Who is the UN target?
I don't know.
Yeah, I have a hard time thinking about anybody that wouldn't, because it's not gonna. It wouldn't be Captain America, right? Like Captain America is not working on the UN,
right?
But I don't know, like maybe what's Pepper Potts up to these days? Somebody like that, some like sort of Avengers adjacent character that would then, outrage them if they were attacked. So that's my guess, is something like that. We also got backstory on Fury and his Skrull wife. We got our answer as to whether or not he knows that his wife is a Skrull. He does. And we found out her name, and then we found out her name again, which briefly confused me. And then I realized, okay, it's just sort of a human cover name, because I guess if your name is Vara, it's probably not a very common name. So, yeah, I mean, it's different than like, I guess Talos or, something like that. Like, I feel like you could get away with Vara, but so her human name is then Priscilla. And I thought there was an interesting moment in the flashback to, what year was it, like 98 or something? So Fury had already
somewhere in there.
Yeah, they already had established this network of Skrulls. Vara / Priscilla was working for him, but not officially working for him. So that allowed them to like legally date. And she hands him a document.
You think S.H.I.E.L.D. has an HR department?
Isn't that what? Was it Maria Hill, I think, goes into the HR department at one point, right? For like the CIA or something like that. But she hands him a document on Dreykov, which I thought was a nice little callback to Black Widow, the villain from that film. So I like that they, continue to just tie things together. Another question we talked about last week was, does Gravik trust Gaia? There was a little bit of tension between the two of them. And again, right away in the first 5 to 7 minutes of this episode, it's pretty much Gravik just walking in and saying, "I don't trust you, Gaia." About how the police found their safe house, which doesn't in the moment necessarily tell us who she was calling last week, which was another question we had. I remember that phone call in Russian. You astutely pointed out that they were in Russia. So yeah, that makes sense that she was just calling the police. Eventually we have our answer that is exactly what she was doing. She was tipping them off as to where their safe house was. So kind of builds the tension between them. And then we'll talk about where that leads to later on in this episode, which I certainly did not expect to happen so quickly.
We only got 6 episodes, bro. We're halfway.
You're not wrong. It's a very good point. And we have complained in the past about how like they kind of build up these storylines and leave them all for the finale. This show doesn't seem to be doing that. This is like, here's the setup, here's the payoff within the same episode. So there are essentially 2 big pieces of this episode. There was the meeting with Talos and Gravik, which was set up in last week's episode. And then there was like that UN attack that I mentioned that was set up beginning of this episode. So the first piece there, we get the meeting between Talos and Gravik, which I don't think we've talked about this enough throughout our discussion of this show. This is one of the best acted Marvel shows, in my opinion. I think Ben Mendelsohn especially has been so good. And then that whole scene with him and Kingsley Ben-Adir, who plays Gravik, was just, it was awesome. So, just want to point that out, give them some props on that, because they've had some really, really good scenes. as far as the acting goes.
Yeah, the back and forth with him and Sam Jackson too, or
Mhm.
one in particular, the later one that was just I thought is so funny, like the perfect release of tension. But
Yeah.
jumping ahead a bit.
So the big takeaway from this meeting between, well, actually, I think there were a couple things. Talos and Gravik. First off, we learned that Talos, he's kind of on edge. Anytime somebody brings up Gaia, it's immediately sets him off, and so he first threatens Gravik, and then we get that really cool scene where everyone in the cafeteria surrounding them reveals themselves to be a Skrull. They all turn into Gravik. So really like the way that was done. Then when he brings up Gaia again, Gravik or Talos stabs him in the hand and then goes to choke him, which nobody responded to that one, which I thought was interesting. But so yeah, you get that dynamic of Talos sort of losing his temper. He's losing his cool, which comes back into play later on. But Gravik then gives us probably the bigger reveal in that scene. He immediately heals himself from that stab wound because he has clearly injected himself. I don't know, infused himself with Extremis, which is the chemical super soldier serum type of thing from Iron Man 3. So you see that orangey glow, which I guess they found a way to stabilize it because he's not blowing anybody up right now.
It's true.
Well, at least not since the first episode. Anyway, so we learned that he has already begun the process of turning himself into a super Skrull, possibly all the way to a super Skrull at this point. We don't know. So that machine is already in use. I'll have another thought about that as we get to the end of this episode, which judging by your reaction to that, I feel like you're on the same page, but we'll see. I want to talk about a moment after, and maybe I'm reading into too much. Immediately after that meeting, when Talos leaves the museum they're in, he bumps into a man, and the man, like, they both apologize to each other. The man picks up Talos' cell phone, hands it back to him, and then walks away. It's a really weird interaction that makes me think, like, all right, they're setting that up that we're going to get a flashback later on and see that
was a drop.
Yeah,
I think it was.
Yeah. But I don't know on whose part, like who was dropping what.
I think Talos was receiving something, but that just my reading. But then he wouldn't need to say, I don't know, that's just for this. I think this is yours.
Yeah.
Like, wow, what a nice man.
No, it was just a weird interaction that they lingered on for a while. And then to make it weirder, the Talos goes left, the other man goes right, and Gravik comes out and follows the other man. I don't know if that was to think like, oh, he kind of looks like Talos from a distance, so like maybe that's what he was doing, or I don't know what the thought process was.
They didn't switch faces.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm really curious.
Blood comes from his face.
So I'm hoping that comes back and it wasn't just like a really weird edited moment in the show. We'll have to see. We have 3 episodes left for that to come into play. Let's see. What else did we have? Have I jumped past anything? We're kind of moving quickly.
Did we already talk about the conversation between Fury and his wife when she's kind of giving him the business about being gone and how she basically is a widow twice? Like,
no, we didn't. We kind of blew past that actually. There was, and again, this goes back to the really good acting in this show as well. I think this was a really good scene between these two actors. And yeah, you're right. I honestly, I totally had forgotten about Nick Fury, blipping until that was brought up. So
yeah. And then also, I think we all know the theory by now is that Apple won't let bad guys use their phone. So when she had a Samsung Z Flip, I'm like,
yeah, I didn't even really think about that. That's pretty funny. And I never in a million years would have been able to identify the exact name of that phone. So
well, it folds. There's only so many folding phones these days.
That's a fair point. Yeah, I didn't really think about. There is clearly something going on with Priscilla, which we'll talk about more later on. But yeah, so I'm really curious to know what's happening there. So we we get to that moment that you were alluding to earlier. Well, first off, we got a fun moment with Sonya Fallsworth again, who Olivia Colman continues to absolutely crush it. She has her little brass owl named Nick Fury now with a little eye patch on, covering up the little camera that Nick snuck on there. Sorry, hang on. I just called him Nick, which makes me
This week's Scroll.
It's okay. I stopped myself from doing it. We have over the course of this podcast, because it's just natural.
Right. Yeah, of course. So we get to the second big part of this episode, which is again that attack on the UN. Fury and Talos find out about it. They know exactly where they have to go, thanks to Sonya Fallsworth, to call off this attack, which is coming from a British sub attack launching at a UN plane flying overhead. So we get that scene you were talking about where Fury and Talos are driving there, and there's this really good back and forth. First, though, I want to point out that Benji remains fully Team Gravik because Talos does take a moment to talk about how he does not like dogs. We know from last week that Gravik loves dogs. So maybe Benji is a Skrull as well. So, yeah, I mean, you mentioned like the way that there was so much tension between these two characters, between Talos and Fury. And then it's also done in a way that, it makes you laugh in the end, too. So I think it was a classic Marvel Studios scene, right? Just done so well between these two really, really great actors who are, again, absolutely crushing it in this show.
Yeah, it was just so unexpected. You're so used to these scenes where they're just driving and then there's like quiet and they're still driving, but it's like, no, we're here. Like, remember the thing we're doing? I laughed so hard. And it's not even that it was that funny. It was just like, it was so unexpected.
Right. Yeah, it is. It felt very real, right? Like it's like you've definitely been involved in that sort of situation before where you get like so sucked into a conversation and you're just like, oh, we're here. So I like the way that was very grounded in reality there for a show that's about shape-shifting aliens invading Earth. So yeah, we continue on with this mission here. We get back to that point I made earlier. Talos gets himself caught by Bob. I don't even know if we even ever really got his full name, but just they call him Bob repeatedly, so that's what stuck with me. And then of course Bob impersonates Talos, calls Fury Nick over their comms, and so that tips him off. Fury takes Bob's son hostage, and they have a little hostage exchange situation there. For you, once you found out that they had to get his passcode to call off this strike, did you have an idea of what the passcode was? Because he repeatedly called out his son's name. So I was just like, it's Zachary or Zach or something. It's some sort of like, that's what it's going to be.
No, I didn't. I mean, when I watch these things, I still have to like keep an eye on like Laughing Place. So I'm not always paying 100% attention, but yeah, no, I did not catch that. And I don't know if I would have if I was paying that much attention, to be honest.
I mean, maybe I would just, yeah, maybe I was just thinking too far ahead and trying to solve things. But the big development from this though is that they couldn't get the answer themselves. So Talos has to have Gaia go and get the yeah, it's Zachary 1 exclamation point actually is the code. Actually, I want to back up one step too, because the reason they couldn't get the code from Bob is because he mentioned Gaia's name, and that immediately sets Talos off, and he kills him. Which you see Fury's face, kind of like, "What did you just do?" So that then makes Talos call in Gaia's help. She has to beat up a few guards to get into where they are keeping the real Bob. And go through his memories, get the passcode. They call off the strike, again, saving whatever mystery UN representative this is that would have involved the Avengers. So yeah, that then sets into motion Gaia's, frantic escape from the Skrull compound, because now she's outed herself as the traitor in Gravik's group, which then, of course she's not going to get away. Gravik stops her before she can. And how surprised were you to see that she's just mid-sentence when Gravik just pulls the trigger and drops her right there?
Well, first, before that, I was. This is where my correction comes in, because we were talking about, well, maybe they, take these identities early on, and they just happen to be in positions of power over time. But we see Shooter McGavin
Yeah,
in
we do. Yeah.
one of the machines. So no, it's a later stage takeover. So I thought that
Yeah.
was interesting. We weren't quite sure about that, because I'm like, yeah, there's not just gonna be like two. It's not a Dave situation. There's not gonna be two people just walking around. They're like, hey. He's not the real Dean. And this makes a little bit more sense than my no, they're just, they all went to Harvard. They're very smart and worked their way into positions around the world. It was very strategic, took 30 years. And
I do still think there are there could be cases where that's, they just impersonated some random person. You get it all the time, right? Like, hey, you look just like that celebrity. Like Kyle, people might tell you look just like Frankie Jonas, and
thank you. It's very sweet that you're calling Franklin Jonas a celebrity.
That's fair. You're right. That was the biggest compliment to him, actually. But no, yeah. So I think.
By the way, DB wants us to make bold claims a section of Zzzax of Live.
I did watch Claim to Fame, by the way, this second episode, which was, if you're not watching Claim to Fame on ABC or just on Hulu, fantastic. It's such a ridiculous concept for a show, and it's so much fun. Anyway, getting back to Secret Invasion. So Gravik shoots Gaia, seemingly kills her, drives off. That's the end of their story for this episode. Do we think Gaia is dead?
No. I don't know. Did she turn green? I didn't see green.
They did. She did. She transformed back to Skrull in that moment. Yeah. So
maybe she just knows how to play dead.
Exactly. I think she's playing whatever the Skrull equivalent of a possum is. I think it's very possible that, she saw this machine in use and she snuck in there, used it herself, and now she has Extremis, and she'll heal herself from this gunshot and then be back in the next episode. Now, I could see that going either way, though. I could see them killing her off and her being more of a, a factor for Talos, as opposed to being a more like an important character on her own. And, real world, like thinking about this pragmatically, Emilia Clarke, huge star, they could be thinking we want to keep her character alive, have her move forward in the MCU, or she's too busy and we can't schedule her and contract her. So I don't know. It could go either way with that. My guess, though, is she is still alive. And I'm going with the Extremis theory. That's my thought. All right. So then one last scene in this episode, and we go back to Priscilla, and she... weirdly, I couldn't follow exactly where she was going. It looks like she's like making her way through a train station and she's afraid that she's being followed. Then she's in like a bank where she's like taking out a safety deposit box. So I wasn't sure where exactly she was. I don't know if you could piece that together any better than I could.
Nah.
I'm not sure. But anyway, so she was clearly looking like paranoid. She goes and gets a safety deposit box taken out. She pulls a gun out of it, holds it for a second, and then puts it back. She then takes a phone call. The closed captioning on Disney Plus just says "man on the phone." Sounds like Rhodey.
Sounds like Rhodey.
Yeah, it sounded like Rhodey. I was a little bit surprised actually to see that, because I don't initially listen with the subtitles or watch with the subtitles. But then going back and writing my recap and everything, which you can check out on laughingplace.com. I do just for, to get any extra information they throw into, with the closed captioning. So, and again, just man on the phone. So I was surprised that they didn't just out him as Rhodey, because clearly sounds like him. So Priscilla tells him she needs to talk to Gravik, and he says, well, you're talking to me. And he gives her a meeting place. And that's the end of the episode. It's very menacing in tone. And, going back to what you said about Priscilla potentially being a villain of some sort, I'm not sure. I almost feel like she is somebody we're supposed to be rooting for, and then now she is being threatened and we should feel like she's in danger. So I'm really not sure what to make of this final scene. Again, answered a lot of questions for us and gave us a whole lot of new ones.
Yeah. No, I think it's very possible that, she might have, she's like, I didn't think you were coming back. Like, I was just acting like a widow. So she could have, done things or shown allegiance to this this cause and not really had the same sort of animosity toward, or maybe she did have animosity towards Nick, but not in the same way that Gravik does. But yeah, if she's operating on the assumption that he's, gone and not going to do anything, then, there's some forgiveness there that she might take up the things that are, even though we see them as, okay, well, there's Nick and then there's this group. It's like, well, it might not be as obvious in the absence of Nick.
Right. Yeah. No,
Nick, because I'm this week's Skrull.
Yeah. You called him so many times too. So, I mean, just outing yourself as a Skrull again and again. Yeah, no,
if I'm a Skrull, why did I take this face?
Again, because you saw Frankie Jonas on Claim to Fame, and yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic with this character. I'm not sure what to make of it. I have so many questions, and I'm afraid to make theories again, because this show that random encounter with that man on the street between him and Talos, maybe that is something that's just going to branch out and change everything we know about this show. I have no idea. So there's just so many variables, and again, still don't trust anybody. It's really tense, and just looking. I don't know that I've been, aside from maybe after the 4th episode of Moon Knight, I don't know that I've been like on edge waiting for the next episode since WandaVision. So I think this episode, or this show, Secret Invasion, is doing a really, really good job of
particularly this episode. I said this morning that I think that this episode had the best hook for upcoming. Yeah.
Again, it leaves us with a lot of questions that we just are going to be itching to have answered now for a week. All right. Anything
6
else?
days, if it makes it
6 days from now. Yes. Yeah. Anything else on this episode? Again, really liked it. I'm really liking this show. Think it's incredibly well acted. The tension is off the charts. Just looking forward to next week now.
Same. Think we're ready to take the banner down.
Ready to take the banner down, which means we are ready to get into our games. I am realizing, as I see our guests waiting down there, that I did not give him a heads up that we are going to be starting off with this game. How much is that cameo?
He knows the drill.
He's been on plenty of times before. We've got the one and only host of Who's the Boss podcast, Mike Celestino.
Hello, good to be back. It's been not very long since I was on the show.
It has been not very long. You're right. What did we do last? What was the last draft that we had you on for? I can't even remember. It was like 3 weeks ago, and we already can't remember.
I honestly don't remember. But.
Well, we're going to get into a fun draft. It's very fitting that we have you on for this draft as well. But first, we're going to play another round of How Much Is That Cameo? Kyle, what Secret Invasion star do you have this week?
Actually, not a Secret Invasion star, but let me play you this person's very brief intro in a new medium.
Hi, friends. Just send me what you want as long as it's legal. Okay.
So she didn't say, but that's Ginger Gonzaga. She was Nikki in She-Hulk. And I've gone on record saying that I used to watch her on The Morning After on Hulu back when Hulu was a free service. And now she's part of the MCU and she's on Cameo. So my question for you is, how much is that cameo?
Well, are we asking how much for legal cameos or how much?
No, this is just the regular regular cameo, personal use.
I wish I could remember just back to last week for how much Shooter McGavin was charging. I don't know, Mike, do you want to set the bar first? Do you want me to go first here?
I'll go ahead and I'll just say 50 even.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like I've been coming in too low lately, but I don't want to go too much higher than that because I do think that's a pretty fair number. I'm going to say $75.
All right. But this week's winner is Mack, because that cameo is $125.
Oof, wow. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, like I said,
so if you add your two answers together.
I'm surprised you didn't hit us with the this week's winner is Mike, and then kind of draw it out like you usually do.
I've done that too many times. Also, I learned that if you play a vertical video in here, then it only covers part of it instead of
Yeah. It only blocks out our guest. That's it.
Yeah.
Next time I'll
All right.
come around like this.
You guys ready to draft?
I'm
Sure.
ready.
If I told you
I've got a
we
good
were
list.
team together. Assemble.
Sorry to cut you off there, Mike.
It's fine.
He's got a good list. That's what I
That-
got.
You do. I'm very interested in what a good list for this even looks like, because we're going to be drafting Marvel characters to start a podcast with, and so it's very fitting that we have the other Laughing Place podcast host with us for this draft. Mike, you know the drill here. We are going to be doing a snake draft. Would you like to pick first, second, or third?
I'm going to switch it up a little bit this time because I feel like I always pick first. I'm going to go third this time.
Okay.
I like third sometimes for weird ones like this. Makes a lot of sense.
I mean, you're not wrong, and this is definitely a weird one. I don't feel like there's a clear 101 here, and I do have the first pick, so not sure where I'm going. There's kind of two that I like, and I'm trying to play the game of which one possibly comes back to me. I'm going to go with a guy who we know has a podcast in the MCU. I'm going to take Scott Lang.
Okay. That's a good pick.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that he has a podcast in Miss Marvel, so I think, and I feel like I could have a conversation with Scott Lang for quite a while. We could talk about ice cream, all was it 31 flavors or something like that. So I think that's a good way to start off. Again, there's one other out there that I think, actually, now that I think about it, there's a couple others that I kind of really want. So
I'm probably thinking of the one that I'm going to pick, who is also a content creator and is going to, give me some youthful energy for my podcast. I'm picking Kamala Khan.
Yeah, Kamala Khan was the other one that I thought of immediately. We're all three of us. We're nerds. We're absolutely willing to embrace that, and so Kamala Khan would fit in very well with us. So that was a good pick. Probably should have been the 101, I think, but one with Scott Lang instead. Mike, you chose to pick third. How did that work out for you here?
Well, I will say I think I have a longer list for this one than I've had in the past for any of the what do we call this? A draft that we've done.
So you felt
that I've done
in going third, and not like you had to get one before your entire list dried up.
But also in the two that you guys have picked already, I have not had an overlap yet. So,
wow. Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. But the first one I am going to go with is I had to pick my favorite Marvel Comics character, and just one that I would really like to hang out with and chat with. And he's not a nerd. He's a very amiable character, though, that I think it would just be fun to talk to. And that's Ben Grimm, aka The Thing.
That is a good one. I like that. I didn't think about that. And when you made me nervous for a second, and I probably shouldn't say this yet because it could still be picked, but you said your favorite Marvel Comics and kind of paused before character. And I knew your favorite character is Ben Grimm. I had him written in there before you even picked him. But I thought you were going to say Reed Richards, and I could just think of the nightmare that would be a Reed Richards podcast. That just
Can I ask you guys a question? Are you thinking of this as like for when you're making your list and you're going to be drafting? Are you choosing like a podcast with all these people as a round table, or just like, well, if I couldn't get this person, then I would take like
I was thinking one-on-one.
Okay.
Yeah, probably it has to be a one-on-one because I think a podcast with even 5 hosts is probably too much. But yeah, I could see it going either way though, depending on the chemistry you build here. All right, Mike. So you started off with Ben Grimm. You have back-to-back picks. So who's your second round going to be?
My next pick is a deep cut
Ooh.
From my teenage years reading Marvel Comics. I don't believe this character has even been referenced in the MCU. So it's a deep cut. My second choice is the awesome Slapstick.
Oh, wow. Okay. I think you've brought him up on the podcast before.
That's very possible. I have fond memories of reading those comics as a teenager, but theoretically, he is a funny character. I don't know if I went back and read those again, if they would actually be funny or if he would actually be funny.
Right.
But intended to be a funnier member of the Marvel superhero community.
Oh, for sure. I mean, his name is Slapstick.
Yeah.
And now that you mention it too, I don't know that Slapstick has ever been adapted for like anything. I can't put a voice to Slapstick in any way. So no idea.
It would be, I mean, you could do a cartoon easily, but it would be tough to put him in the MCU.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. Although, seeing what they did with the Spot in Across the Spider-Verse, I think potential for crazy.
Haven't seen it yet. Okay.
Well, I mean, spoiler alert: the Spot is a character.
Okay.
And not the 7-Up guy.
Not the 7-Up guy. No. All right, Kyle, you have Kamala Khan. Who else would you like to do a podcast with?
So yeah, total zag here. That's why I was asking the question about whether this is supposed to be one podcast, because I got the fun, dishy episode. Now I'm gonna have a serious theological debates with Vision.
Yeah. Okay, Vision was on my list. Vision for me is one where I'm like, I don't want to have a one-on-one podcast with Vision. I don't know how long that.
Well, no, that's exactly. I want to have guests on for Vision to debate, whereas I'm kind of like the moderator, and then sometimes we'll have conversations.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's what I envision for this podcast.
Oh, okay, that's what you envision for this audio medium.
Yes.
Yeah, Vision was on my list more so as like a research partner for like if we're talking about it. Like Vision's going to have the answers if we're questioning anything while we're on the air. Just easily go to our.
Yes, that's AI. Very true. An outstanding producer.
Okay, so I have Scott Lang. I'm now back up with back-to-back picks. Kamala Khan was second on my list. Sorry to say Ben Grimm and Slapstick were not on my list. Although I do think Ben Grimm would be a good, he might not know what a podcast is, but he would be a pretty good host, I think. I'm going to go with the first name that came to mind. And usually the first name that comes to mind for ridiculous drafts like this, it's going to be Deadpool. Yep. It's just, that's going to be an interesting podcast
for some reason.
Well, I mean, I have Scott Lang, but I think I need to differentiate. I don't want Hank Pym on my podcast. So I didn't want to say Ant-Man. So by the way, Scott Lang and Deadpool together on one podcast would be fantastic. Also just give me Ryan Reynolds and Paul Rudd to do a podcast with. I would happily do that as well. Which I know they listen to the show. So if you guys are interested, let me know. All right.
We're replacing Kyle so soon.
Okay. Kyle, that's not going to happen, but if Paul Rudd does call, I think you have to.
I mean, he lives in Kansas City. I'm sure I could, or he hasn't lived there, but he goes there a lot. It's from there. I could go.
True, yeah, he's a big Chiefs fan. Unfortunately, one drawback: nobody's perfect. All right, I have another character that fits with these two that I have already, and I do think there's a chance Kyle takes him, but I kind of want to just play the game and change gears, go for a different type of character here. So I'm going to do that, and we're going to hope that somebody else comes back to me. I'm going to go for sometimes if you want to have a serious discussion, you want a very well-researched, well-read person to have that discussion with. I'm going to take Hank McCoy, aka Beast from the X-Men.
Okay. Specifically Kelsey Grammer? Or?
Yes, I was going to say, give me that Kelsey Grammer voice and connection to Frasier and the whole radio host thing. And yeah, so Hank McCoy is my pick.
Well, for my pick, this one actually could work with my first idea. We have the youthful energy and, bright eyes, but you also like a little bit of angst from time to time. So I'm taking Michelle Jones.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that. I could totally see that character having a podcast as well.
Yes. That's MJ from the Home movies.
The Home movies, yes.
The Home movies.
Spider-Man movies, the Home movies. I like it. Yeah, Michelle Jones is a good pick, and I will put her in as Michelle Jones because if I just say MJ, we're drafting characters from anything. It could be comic
I
book.
prefer you put Michelle MJ Jones.
All right, that's a good compromise. We can do that.
Better
right,
than
Mike.
the home movies that I originally had. I'm like, I should probably say her full name.
Mike, we are back to you for your last two picks here.
Yeah, I want to say there still has been no overlap between what you guys have chosen and my list, which is I must have been really outside the box here. But I feel like this one is probably one of the more obvious ones. And she is very intelligent. She's very strong. She's got experience in the superhero side and the intellectual side of the Marvel universe. And I think she had a lot of really great stories to tell on a podcast. Jennifer Walters.
Yeah, that's where I thought you were going there. Yeah, I almost had her on my list and then pivoted to somebody else instead. But yeah, Jen Walters is, and you can go full on. Well, I guess breaking the fourth wall in a podcast. I don't know how it works, but I think that would be a lot of fun. So that's an interesting dynamic to add in there as well. Okay, so Ben Grimm, Slapstick, Jen Walters. What is Slapstick's real name? I'll put them in as She-Hulk in the thing, but
I honestly don't remember.
I have no idea if Slapstick even has a human alias. Okay, who's your fourth podcast
Okay,
partner?
I feel like any of the Illuminati would be a good choice here because they're all really smart.
All except one. I think.
Right. I actually, the last thing I wrote down here on my list and was going to make this joke at the end, but since you brought it up, the worst choice would be Black Bolt.
Yeah. I have a couple of worse choices as well. So.
But I'm going to go way, way outside the box here. And I'm going to pick for my fourth choice, the cosmic being known as Eternity.
Okay. All right. I'm trying to remember ever hearing Eternity speak.
That's a good question. But what I was reading about him when I was doing a little research before the show, and the Wikipedia entry said in his first appearance, he had a conversation with Doctor Strange. So I'm assuming he spoke.
Yeah.
But I just feel like he's been around since the beginning of time, knows everything there's to know.
Literally is just the beginning of time.
Yeah.
So, that's a good one. Good reasoning. I'm trying to think. I'm like, well, he didn't speak in Love and Thunder,
right?
And then but you're right. I can picture the comic bubbles there for him now. So, I like it. All right, and what a complete change of direction for the round.
I tried to spread the love a little bit.
Kyle, you have Kamala Khan, Vision, Michelle Jones. Who's your fourth going to be?
I don't know. Well, see, I had an idea of who I was going to pick, but then another one just came to mind, and now I'm a little torn.
I can't believe you haven't taken Happy Hogan yet. So if that's what it's going to be here.
No, I guess I'll stick with my first idea. I'm going to take Luis.
Yeah, that was the one. That was the one that I had that I was like afraid Kyle might take from me.
Yeah, I figured that's partially why. I'll say the other one I was torn on in case you wanted to take him, Korg.
Oh, I didn't have Korg on my list, but that would be a fun one as well.
Yeah, you guys mentioned Love and Thunder. Like, Korg might be fun.
Yeah, I could see Korg, Thor, and Meek actually having a podcast. That would be pretty interesting. Okay, yeah, Luis. Obviously, you just want to have a conversation with that guy, and
great
be a
storyteller.
Very easy job to have, right? Like you say like 3 words and then Luis goes for 45 minutes and then you
Kevin Smith. It's basically like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, that was the one. Like I said, I was hoping Luis would come back to me. Should have saved Hank McCoy probably for my last pick, but okay. So then I'm gonna change things up. I'm gonna go with a very different reasoning for my last pick here. Listen, there's an easy way to get listeners on your podcast right from the beginning, and it's to have a celebrity host. So I'm going to take Dazzler, the X-Men /pop singer with her big following, and we're just going to immediately be one of the top 10 whatever category we're talking about. We're going to shoot right to the top of that. So Dazzler is my fourth pick, and pop star, so great voice as well. Gonna go through our final teams here. I have Scott Lang, Deadpool, Hank McCoy, and Dazzler. Kyle has Kamala Khan, Vision, Michelle Jones, and Luis. And Mike has Ben Grimm, Slapstick, Jennifer Walters, and Eternity. honorable mentions out there? You guys have anybody? Mike, I'm sure you have the rest of your list still there.
Yeah, here's some of the other ones. Well, I had some of the Illuminati, like I mentioned. I also had Professor Xavier and Magneto as options.
Ooh.
Let's
the two
see.
of them together, that would be pretty
No, a separate entrance, but yeah, together would be good too. Cosmo the Space Dog and Howard the Duck.
nice.
That pretty much rounded out my list.
Howard the Duck would be a fun one for sure. I want to bring up the comment from Benji here asking, did anybody draft J. Jonah Jameson?
No, because I don't want to get sued for libel or slander, I guess, because this would be spoken.
Right. While I would
listen,
I would happily listen to a podcast with Triple J. I don't know that I want to be on a podcast with him. I don't think that would probably just wouldn't be good for my health, to be honest.
Exactly.
Kyle, what else is on your list?
Well, I had one of our go-tos. If you want to have a big fancy podcast studio, you got to get Tony Stark involved.
Yep, Tony Stark is on there.
And then kind of in the same vein to what in case I didn't get Kamala, I also had America Chavez, Kate Bishop, and Peter Parker.
Yeah, I thought about Peter Parker. I didn't actually put him on my list. So the next name on my list was Heimdall, and I was thinking just I need that great voice. So, this isn't doing anything for the audio listeners, but this comment from Benji kind of threw me off a little bit here. Not true entirely, at least.
Making jokes about that, I have one I could make, but I'm going to keep it to myself for now.
Yeah, we should probably avoid that topic. Heimdall was on my list strictly for the voice of Idris Elba. I could listen to Idris Elba talk all day. And then another fun one I thought was Mantis. I think just teaching Mantis how Earth works would make a fun one.
Yeah, I love that idea. They should have done that as a promotional thing, honestly. They should have done like little 5-minute podcasts.
Yeah, that would have been a really cool idea. They
Maybe
did
for
like
the home
the
release.
radio show thing too with the like galactic radio. I think they released that on Spotify. But they should have, you're right, they should have done something like that with Mantis. That would have been fun. Like I said, I had a couple of like really bad options. Galactus, I think, would probably not make a great podcast host. Also, Groot, thought that might be a pretty difficult one to work with.
The Watcher, have we mentioned that one?
Oh, that would be a pretty good one
too. Yeah.
All right. Well, Mike, as I mentioned, you are the host of Who's the Boss pod. What's going on over there?
The new episode is all about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, the new Lucasfilm release for this week. So check it out. Just came out. Well, we recorded yesterday. It came out this morning in audio form.
Real quick,
yeah.
haven't seen the movie. Real quick, one word. What's your thought on the movie?
One word. Overlong.
Overlong. All right. Okay.
I'm taking confused with that Foo Fighters song.
That's Everlong.
Everlong. I also wanted to ask you guys too, while we were drafting podcast hosts, and one of my picks actually made me think of this question. Have you guys been listening to any other new podcasts lately? I mean, aside from Zzzax of Life and Who's the Boss?
I pretty much just have my regular stable. Like I really want to listen to that Harrison Ford interview on the Conan O'Brien.
Oh yeah,
podcast.
I saw a little clip of that.
Yeah, but I just have like 3 podcasts that I listen to in
That's
the
fair.
car.
I'm mostly the same way.
Yeah.
I'm still listening to Pod Meets World, which is the Boy Meets World rewatch podcast. They're on season 3. They're about to start season 3. So I've been enjoying watching the episode each week, so it's fresh in my mind, and then listening to their show. And they also have guests on and stuff. So I love Boy Meets World, so I love listening to that.
I will just say that I've been, and my pick of Dazzler came from the fact that I started listening to the Smart Less podcast, which is Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and Sean Hayes, who I guess they've been doing it for a little while now, but immediately shot up to one of the most popular podcasts because they are hugely popular actors. It's really, really funny. They're always interviewing a different guest. So definitely recommend checking that one out. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. I know our schedules got kind of crossed up and you kind of...
You're welcome. I'm sorry for bumping you this week. I will
right.
try to coordinate that better in the future. So apologies.
Yeah, no worries. Like we said, it was a holiday week and things sort of got all mixed up. But anything else before you go, Mike? Anything else you're working on?
Just looking forward to Comic-Con, and I'll see you there. Very excited for that.
Yeah, we will. We talked a little bit about the Marvel schedule for Comic-Con coming up in a couple weeks. What's any Lucasfilm stuff that we know about?
Yeah, they just announced yesterday there's going to be a Lucasfilm Publishing panel, I think, on Friday afternoon. So that, since we know there's not a lot of big studio stuff, it's going to be a lot of littler stuff like that I think we're all excited about.
I just want to catch up on a couple comments from Benji real quick too. His one word for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was old.
It's also accurate.
And then we have an interview with the crew of Pod Meets World. Kyle, were you aware of that?
Nope.
Were you aware that you did an interview with them?
I was aware that
AI version of Kyle.
They were at C2E2, so I did a recap of their panel, but no, I have not interviewed them. They're going to do a Kansas City show too, so maybe I'll go up, see the Kansas City show, track down Paul Rudd, get him to take my place.
It all just comes together. All right. Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining us again. We'll see you, I'm sure, at some point for another ridiculous draft that we'll immediately forget about afterwards.
Anytime.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for another episode of the Zzzax of Live podcast. We'll be back next week to talk about the 4th episode of Secret Invasion. Anything else going on, Kyle, that we need to... Any housekeeping stuff that I always forget about that you remind me of in the last seconds? Well, be sure to follow us on Twitter at Zzzax of Life Pod. So you
for
can
as
vote
long as you can.
But we'll have hopefully maybe.
Are we on Threads yet?
we'll have some news to talk about for that next week maybe. But yeah, as of this recording, Threads dropped last night, so haven't jumped on that just yet. But
that's weird because I follow your wife.
I haven't set up. We'll be on there eventually. But yeah, in the meantime, follow us on Twitter at Zzzax of Life Pod, so you can vote for who you think won this draft. That poll will be up. If you're listening to the audio, it's up by now. Probably.
Who won the last 2?
That's an excellent question, Kyle. And if you can stall for like 15
I mean, I could just tell you I won the last one.
Oh, did you? Okay. All right.
I did.
That's why you brought it up then. I should have known.
Thankfully.
I should have known that it was you, and that's why you did win the last 2. So you won our 4th of July recast, where you recasted Jaws.
I hadn't seen Jaws.
You had never seen. And I will say, I think you had the best movie, and the way I phrased it was, which movie would you like to see? So that might have given you an edge. And then you won going back to, because we always forget to bring up the results of our drafts, the most memorable MCU character deaths, which I'm disappointed in the result of that one because Tony Stark should have been a shoe-in right there. But so yeah, Kyle's on a roll right now.
Black Widow. It was that third. I owe that win to my 3rd place position. So Mike,
true, yeah, you got that one.
Yes, Doobie did miss. Yeah, he's on to something. Choosing 3rd place this time, 3rd position this time.
Yeah, maybe we'll see how these podcast hosts fare with the audience. Doobie, you did not win your draft. No, as we were just talking about, Kyle kind of dominated that one. Actually, I think the fact that we gave him Jaws probably gave him a big advantage. But so we'll see how this one goes, and we'll be back next week again. Zzzax of Life Pod on Twitter. We'll probably be on Threads by next week. And be sure to check out laughingplace.com for all your Marvel news and Disney news in general. Anything else, Kyle?
Bye.
We got to bring those back. We haven't done that since it's been a live show, but yeah.
Yeah.